Welcome to NDTR Spotlight, the corner of the internet where NDTR shine. I'm your host, Marie Lorraine. And if you've been following or listening for a little bit now, you'll know how important networking is for all of the NDTRs we have on this spotlight. And you don't just network on Instagram or LinkedIn, but other resources. One particularly is through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and they have a subunit specifically for diet technicians. We interviewed Dre, who leads that, and we also had some other DTRs who are part of that group. And today I bring it up because Sabrina is our guest today, and we connected via a virtual meeting that they do every once in a while where you can talk to other NDTRs across the entire country, which is so fun just to hear what DTRs are doing across the country and be able to ask them your own questions and not have to listen in on a conversation. So I encourage you to, if you are involved in the Academy or not, to think about joining that group and joining those virtual meetings. But so we're here with for Sabrina, and I bring up the group too because Sabrina is not very active on social media, but she's not letting that hinder her from getting really good network experience. So notes to take. Sabrina's already a star with that. And so a little bit about her. She has 2 associate's degrees, one in fine arts and another one in diet technology. Excuse me. So she has her associates to become a diet technician. And then she has a bachelor's degree in operations management and 2 credentials behind her name, the NDTR, and then a certified associate in project management. And then, if that's not enough, she is currently in grad school pursuing health informatics and health information management. So, informatics, when I heard that she was doing that through the virtual meeting, I was like, I'm going to need you on NDTR Spotlight because that is a field we talk about very briefly. And I mention it every then and again, but it's something that I think we can go into a lot more depth now, being able to talk to someone who is in the weeds, studying the information, knows all the new stuff coming out. So I'm super, super excited. And this is a nice kind of additional interview. We had Annika on our podcast, and she's a digital diet tech. And so now we have Sabrina, who's doing this informatics. So I think I've talked about her enough. Let's meet Sabrina. Sabrina, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much for having me. I am so excited to be here to network and be in community with other DTRs. Like Marie had said, I just don't really know too many DTRs. And so trying to get out there and know that we exist and I'm not the only one. So it's so nice to be here.
Yes, yeah, it's nice when you can find that community. So before you found the community, how did you find out about NDTRs from let's go to the very beginning?
So I'm a Googler. I was Googling what to do. So like you had mentioned, I had studied fine arts. I have a degree in theater, which, not a super strong career outlook for me. And so I needed to do something that could be reliable, where I could find a job. And my partner at the time was in the military. And so I thought, okay, healthcare, like there's going to be some sort of healthcare wherever he's stationed. And then I was like, I can't be a nurse. I can't deal with that. Like that is entirely too much. And then I thought about food service because I was already working in food service. So I was like, okay, how can I kind of mesh all of these ideas together? And I'm originally from Arizona. So I was looking at schools in Arizona at the time, and I found a distance learning program for DTRs. And it all just kind of fit together with my situation that I had at the time. So it was really some deep Googling and some soul searching, but also, market strategy, trying to figure out, what the job market is like and where I'm going to be. So it's kind of an adventure.
Yeah. Okay. I can definitely relate to not wanting to be a nurse. So finding the nutrition path. And so did you see the dietitian credential come up at all, or was it because you came from that food service that you just found the DTR credential?
So I found the DTR credential mostly because I was looking for something online and something that was cheaper. Like getting to a 4-year university at that time was really cost prohibitive for me, and community college is just more affordable. And I was also looking for something online. And at that time, like this was like this was a long time ago. There wasn't a lot of options that were completely online because I was living on the Oregon coast at the time. And so I couldn't move to go to a school. And so I really needed something that I could do at a distance. And this was really one of the only programs that like fit all of those for me.
Oh my gosh. So you did an online DTR program.
Mhm.
I have to ask, what was that experience like?
Um, it was a little bit lonely, to be honest, but it fit the life that I had at the time. I was working full time, trying to fit school into my schedule, trying to do this kind of establishing a career. So it really took a lot of, initiative on myself to network and to find people because when you do a 2-year DTR degree, you still have to do an internship with it. And my program, they didn't really help you find an internship. It was really on you to find someone that would be your preceptor. And so I was just kind of like banging down doors to find people. So it was lonely from that sense because there wasn't a strong community in the program, but I kind of went outside of myself to try and build that community for me to not only like fill my degree requirements, but to also find, where can I work? Can they help me get a job? And, things like that.
Talk about pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone to find those internship rotation sites. And then after that, to have to find a job. So during the internship, was it helpful being pushed to do that, to build your own internship in the job process, looking for a job after you graduated?
It was really challenging. The internship was amazing. My preceptor was absolutely wonderful. I was still working during the time that I was doing my internship, so I had a lot going on, and she was just really supportive. She was the kind of person who only wanted to take distance learning students because she knew the challenges that come with that and wanted to be available to those people. And so her and I worked together to kind of decide, what we were going to do and what that was going to look like. Because she usually took on RD interns, usually for their food service rotation. So actually having to do the full internship and stuff was something she had never done before. So she was instrumental in getting me through that process and then starting me on my journey to becoming, a full-fledged NDTR out there working. And I'm still trying to carve out that niche for myself as an NDTR, where do I want to work? Where can I make money? Because I live in Seattle and it's expensive here. And so where can I make money to live my life? So, there's a lot of things that go into that career search afterwards.
Yes. And so that was interesting that so your preceptor was a dietitian, is that correct? Or was it a DTR, a
Yeah,
dietitian?
she was a dietitian.
And so it was you just had her, or did you have other preceptors during your internship?
She was my main preceptor. The woman who ran the food service department, I was in a long-term care facility for veterans for my internship. And the woman who ran the food service, she was a DTR. And then they had a certified dietary manager who he did inventory, and he was ex-military too. He came from the Army, so he had that unique perspective. And there were other dietitians that were there for the internship, but they were not my direct preceptors.
Got you. That's interesting. That's great that you had different a DTR, someone doing inventory, and then a dietitian. So you got to work with like that whole team aspect during your internship. I'm sure that was very valuable to you. So you mentioned the job. So how is the job search for you? Did you find a job before you were credentialed? Did you get the credential, then find a job? Talk us through that process.
Yeah, so I had a lot of challenges finding a job after graduation. I think having the 2-year degree in Seattle, which is a very saturated market, was a liability for me because there are a lot of people here with 4-year degrees. who either are not credentialed or have the DTR or are working towards their RD at a graduate level. So I was really unique in this area of having the 2-year degree plus the credential, which was really challenging to find a job. And so that is kind of what spurred me on and said, okay, I need to get a 4-year degree. And at that time I was working in retail, doing food service, just trying to like make all the ends meet kind of thing. And it was like, okay, I really need to get that 4-year degree so that I can, like market myself a little bit differently. And so that's what got me to my bachelor's degree.
Got you. So, and your bachelor's degree, what is it in and why did you choose to go that direction?
Yeah. So I have my bachelor's degree in applied science in operations management. And when you get the 2-year NDTR degree, that is a terminal degree. Like you're done at that point. And so it is really challenging to transfer into an RD program at the undergraduate level. And I'm not even sure how long that's still going to be an option, because you don't have all of the chemistry background, the anatomy and physiology background that's required to transfer into those degrees. And so I had to be really creative. And once again, like, because I was working, finding a program that was virtual was really important to me. And so I did my undergraduate online completely virtually at Arizona State University. And I got a degree in operations management because I thought that could separate me in the marketplace as understanding how to run an organization. I could lead a like a food bank or a food service department or things like that to help develop those leadership skills that you get more access to if you're an RD at the undergraduate or the graduate level. So that was kind of my thought process in finding that degree.
That sounds like it was very well thought out, having that, that angle and not just taking a bachelor's degree just to have it, but to like be able to really market it. So that's great that you thought about it that way. And so did it work for you? Getting a bachelor's degree?
The jury's still out there. I was working in retail at the time, like I said, and so I had a stronger network in retail. And so after I graduated, I continued on that pathway, working in corporate retail operations, primarily focusing on operational technologies. So like workforce management software, customer relationship management software. And that really got me into kind of the tech side of things, from an operational and enterprise-wide perspective. How is technology used to deliver services? And so that it was fun. It was completely not nutrition related at all, but was a really cool experience that kind of got the wheels turning of, okay, how can I get back to my initially what I had set out to do, which is be a nutrition professional. But now I'm like, okay, this is interesting over here, this whole technology thing. So what does that look like if they could be like meshed together? And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is like continuing to carve out that niche of technology and nutrition. And I feel like I'm on a choose your own adventure kind of thing. Like I'm still trying to figure it out.
Yes, and I love it. That's just one of my favorite things about doing these interviews and these conversations, because no path is the same. And that, I mean, how long from when you graduated with your DTR credential to finishing your bachelor's degree, how long was that, would you say?
I think that was 3 years. I just finished up my first certification cycle. So I've had my credential for 5 years now. And then, yeah, I got my bachelor's, I think it was 3 years after I
Yeah.
graduated.
So I just wanted to bring that up because you just talked about that so quickly, but it definitely took some time. We're talking
Yeah.
a few years it took.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it was important because you're finding a niche that in nutrition that I think is going to be so impactful, especially after the pandemic. I just think it's going to just boom. So now you're in grad school. So keep us on this story because we're very intrigued. How did you get into the grad school and kind of continue to open up this new kind of interest in informatics?
Yeah, and it's kind of the silver lining of the pandemic. Retail during that time was not great, and jobs kind of disappeared for me. And so I really had to do some soul searching. It's like, okay, where do my values align with my skill set and where I really can provide, a value to things that are important to me. And that was, kind of some of the soul searching that I did during, all that time we were just sitting on the couch waiting for the pandemic to go away, which we're still dealing with, and so that brought on some more deep Googling. And really what I found was the nutrition informatics practice group. So that was the first kind of introduction that I had to what this could be, which I'd never heard of before. It was like an Oprah aha moment. I was like, this is so cool. Because I was considering getting a master's in public health because I knew, the next economic downturn, I was going to spend that time in grad school. Like I was going to hide out, and it was like the stars aligned and it was time for me to go to grad school. And so I was looking at master's of public health. And then I saw this informatics, the dietetic practice group, and it was just like a light went off. I was like, this is so cool. And so I was continuing to look at those kinds of programs that combined healthcare delivery, information technology and stuff. And that's how I found the program that I'm in now. I went to one informational session and I was like, yes, this is for me. Which was really naive. I was like, oh, this sounds so good. And as I'm learning more, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so huge. So it's one of those things you live and learn, but I'm really glad I'm where I'm at right now. And I have the privilege to ride out the pandemic and focus on myself and my career, which a lot of folks don't have the privilege and the opportunity to do. So that's really how I've been spending my time.
That's great that you have that gratitude with your studies. So many people can take education for granted. So I love that you are, aware of the privilege it is to be able to learn. So with that though, informatics, you said you found the group on the academy, which I love that you're networking. I mentioned that in the beginning of the interview. It's coming up again. She knows how to network. And so what can you break it down to someone who doesn't know anything? I don't know anything about informatics. I just heard it. So what is nutrition informatics?
Yeah, that's good because I copied it from their website so that I had, this is what they say. So nutrition informatics is the intersection between nutrition, information, and technology. And believe it or not, every NDTR and RD is utilizing nutrition informatics. If you use a computer in any kind of way, if you're doing any sort of analysis, whether that's in your clinical practice or you're working in food service or anything like that, basically if you're using Excel, you're doing nutrition informatics. So it even though it sounds like this brand new concept, believe it or not, you're probably working in informatics in some way. And then some nutrition professionals, like myself, hopefully want to make that our primary area of practice. And there is a small but mighty and growing group of people who are in the DPG. And so it's like there's a community around this. So they called out for student liaisons because the practice group, I think, is only like 2 years old. It's very young. And they're like, we need student perspective. And I immediately signed up. I was like, I got to get into this. I got to talk to people about this because I don't even know what I'm getting into. And somebody else was also interested in the student position. So I have a co-student liaison, which is super cool. She just graduated and got accepted to her RD internship. So it's really wonderful to work with her. And we're just having fun and learning, and it's really cool. So if anybody is interested, I would be happy to talk to you. We are a small but mighty group.
Yes, yeah, join that group if you're interested. It sounds like if it's new, this is a great time to get into there and really get
Yeah,
involved when things are new and growing. So what what do you do with it? So great explanation, very simple, loved it. But as a student going like studying this, what do they say that you can do? What are the ideas?
that is the scary part, is you can do almost anything. Like I said, it is a choose your own adventure. There's the clinical folks who are really interested in electronic health records. So if you're working in food service and you have any sort of food service management program, that's nutrition informatics. How does that interact with the electronic health record? If you're working in public health, how are you getting, population health data? So then you're talking about how are you getting information from one place to another. If you're in research or you're doing analytics, then you're talking about like machine learning, artificial intelligence, and things like that. If you are working on an application, like a lot of nutrition professionals, we all use apps. Like I think almost everybody has heard of MyFitnessPal kind of thing. That's nutrition informatics. That's the intersection of technology and nutrition care. I'm interested in public health informatics, which is, how do you get information about population health to the people who can do something about it, is really the simplest way to explain it, to where the information coming from the clinician's office gets to a public health department, to where they can start making policies and changes that impact population health. And I think nutrition professionals are uniquely suited for public health informatics, especially when we're talking about social determinants of health, food insecurity, food justice, and those kinds of things. I think we are uniquely positioned to weigh in on those kinds of topics.
Yeah, you're doing a great job of breaking this down. I am following so well with your explanations. It means that you really know what you're talking about, because if you can explain it to like a second grade level, it means that you know your stuff. So, but I want to ask even further for a little more clarification. You mentioned doing apps and public health and sending out information. So, do you have to know like computer software or coding, or like what is a technology knowledge that you need for health informatics?
Yeah, almost zero to none. Like if you are a consumer of technology, you already know user experience, which is UI or UX design. If you're using an application that you can't figure out, or your client or your patient is having a really hard time with, you already can weigh in on aspects of informatics. So really, just as a consumer of technology, you are in a position to weigh in on how you experience it. In terms of the technical skills, it's really based on what you want to do with it. Almost, there's maybe 2 or 3 people in my program who are very tech heavy folks. Most people are administrators or they're clinicians, don't have a lot of technology experience, but they interact with technology every day. There are some places where you can go, like the DPG is one of them, but there is a HEMA. I forget what the acronym stands for, but they have like a small course that you can pay for. I don't know how long it is, but a lot of folks in the DPG have taken this. It's called the 10 by 10. And if anyone's interested, I can send you more information on it, but it's a good starting ground to kind of get your feet wet on the nitty gritty. The other aspect that I would say is really important is regulation, because healthcare is the most regulated industry that we have. And that's really the challenging part, is the ins and outs of the legislation and all of the regulations that go into healthcare. But in terms of technology, I wouldn't say that there is anything that you have to know. Even if you're not a tech savvy person, this is something that you could do.
Well, you heard it from Sabrina. You don't have to be super tech savvy to go into informatics, so don't let that name scare you off. And thank you for those resources. You said HEMA and 10 by 10, right? For
Hmm.
courses. So great resources to look into. And so kind of going off of that, what does your courses look like in grad school? And are you going to be, how are you going to be pursuing that personal public health?
Yeah. So our classes, they kind of take three avenues. Like there is the enterprise and leadership perspective of healthcare business strategy, and then the soft skills of leadership. And we're in a team-based cohort too. So there's a lot of, team learning that's done together. Um, there is the healthcare regulations part of it. We focus a lot on HIPAA, and stuff like that. And then there is the technology piece. So it's kind of in three different streams. And then for me, I'm also interested in the social aspect of technology. I think technology is a product of human beings. And so as of that, we have innate biases that come into things that we create. So I'm also interested in the social aspect of technology. And so I've kind of taken some classes outside of my program, which nobody told me not to, but you don't exactly ask permission to like go do extra work. But I took a class in Native American health topics, which is something that I'm primarily interested in, is the intersection of nutrition technology and how does that impact indigenous populations. And so I took a class in that outside of my program. So it's really whatever you want to make it. And what's really great, I think, about our credential in terms of our continuing education and our learning is we can really decide where we want to take this credential in terms of our, what do we call it, like our learning log, or something like that. I forget the name, but and that having that be really flexible has helped me a lot in my continuing education to say, okay, these are the kinds of things that I want to do and want to apply to my credential, and then having that flexibility with the registration of it too, which has been really nice.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that continual education, because I'm curious. You had a few years when you're pursuing your bachelor's and you're working in retail where you weren't actively working as an NDTR, but you decided to keep up that credential. So how did you do the continual education when you weren't working in the field, and what motivated you to keep that credential alive and not abandon it?
Yeah, no, I definitely will never abandon it, whether I'm working directly in nutrition care or not. Like, it is so close to my heart, and I earned it and worked hard for it. So in terms of continuing education for an NDTR, we don't need that many credits. I think it's like 50 or something like that. And if you take a like a higher education course, that covers a lot of it. And then, excuse me, also it's not online now, but I know they're working on it, is there is a nutrition informatics certification course. And I don't know if it's an actual certification or what, but there is like a learning track that you can do provided by the academy if you're interested in informatics. And I think it's like 25 credits or something like that. It's quite an investment, but if you're a member of the group, then it's free. And so I went that route. It's not online now, but it will be very soon in the future. I know that they're trying to update some of the content on it because it was a little bit out of date. But that's what I did over the summer, because it was kind of like, well, my learning log's due, so I need to jam pack all of this learning real fast. And that's, to be honest, that's what I did.
That's great. That sounds like a great precursor to your graduate school program to get you like that nutrition, like nice and sharp for what you're studying now in grad school.
Yeah.
And you are just full of so many great little tips like that's coming out on the academy. You know your stuff. That is so helpful. So you mentioned when you were talking about technology, the social, that technology was made by humans and how it can impact different groups of people. And so I'm curious to hear about your perspective on diversity in this field through your lens as a DTR, and then there's this lens of technology that you have. I'm just so curious to hear it. So let's hear it from you, Sabrina. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I've thought about this a lot, and I kind of wanted to answer it a couple ways, just from like my own personal experience and things that I've seen. Um, I am Native American, and I have never met another Indigenous person working in this field. If you identify with being Native American, I would love to know you and meet you, because I haven't met anybody like that. And in terms of, Indigenous ways of knowing and knowing health, that has never been reflected in my education as a nutrition professional, or, outside in other healthcare aspects, which is why I wanted to pursue that, outside of my program and on my own. Because, we hear about health disparities of type 2 diabetes, and there's all kinds of stuff, but I primarily focused on my research for type 2 diabetes. And it was really eye-opening to me, and the class was taught by a Native American woman who is a lawyer. She's a master of public health. Like, this woman was just amazing, and to be taught by another Indigenous person about ourselves was really impactful for me. So in terms of diversity, I think it's challenging, because there are other ways of knowing, not only our bodies, but health and wellness, that aren't necessarily valued or recognized in culture, in higher education. And so just from my own perspective, that's one of the things that I noticed. And then I worked with a couple dietitians who, unprompted, it explained to me why they were overweight and what they were doing about it. And I just, I felt so much compassion for these women, because I mean, that's another thing too. They were women. I've only met a handful of men. But these women, they felt that they needed to justify their body size to me unprompted. And that gave me great pause. I am a fat person as well, and I use fat in a neutral sense, because that's what describes my body. And so I think there is a lack of body diversity in the profession as well. And even just learning about fat bodies, and in a neutral sense, and destigmatizing what it means to be any size of a body. I've also worked with straight size dietitians too, whose clients didn't trust them, because they would never know what it's like to be fat. So why would I listen to you? So I've seen it go both ways. And that has kind of spurred my curiosity into the social aspects of weight, which brought me to learning a little bit more about health at every size, which I guess was also part of my continuing education, but also just, asking questions about the social aspects of things, like why is it this way, and how is that impacting people, that don't necessarily share my identity, or they do, what is that like, and how can I mitigate any harm that could potentially come from that. So that's kind of my answer to your diversity question. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, which is why I think it's important for us to share our identities, and regardless of what it is, so that you can find community with others and see yourself in others, and just know that you're not alone. Even just starting with the NDTR, that is already a small minority status in this profession. Who else is out there that you can connect with?
That is such a such a refreshing and unique perspective on diversity in this field. We have not touched on the health at every size in such depth in the way you explained it so eloquently. And yeah, there's definitely, I know I'm studying for the RD exam right now, and one of the questions is about biases that dietitians hold. And I'm assuming you could extend that also to DTRs, but we just have this bias for weight because we're taught BMI, we're taught just to like assess the weight and then assess and all the health risk. But there's things like the obesity paradox that come up where if you tell them to lose weight, it might be worse for them. And so that's it's great that you brought that up. And is that's something that is tricky because then you have the media, like when is it unhealthy and when is it healthy, and what are the conversations that need to be had, and how can a nutrition professional really come in and do it right without those biases. So I love that you brought up this problem, and so I want to ask, with your expertise in your niche of informatics, where do you think a solution would lie in the field of dietetics in the niche of informatics?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I am definitely no expert. I have lots of opinions, but I'm definitely no expert. One of the things that I think is really challenging is to submit insurance claims. A lot of times you have to provide weight. And I think that patients should be able to refuse being weighed if they are uncomfortable being weighed for any sort of reason. Because when you go to the doctor, you go in, you get your height, your weight, your blood pressure, but how many times has your doctor actually asked you permission to do those things? They don't. You just kind of go through this round with the nurse, and then you sit there and you wait for the doctor. And for some people, getting weighed is extremely traumatic for them, regardless of weight. And from an informatics perspective, if you're looking at an EHR, it may be impossible to go to the next page to get to like your visit report or how you're going to take your documentation of this patient's visit unless you put in their weight. And then insurance companies require that. So that seems so small, but that is one small thing, asking your patient or your client, can I weigh you today? And if they say no, that it should be allowed for them to refuse. So that's like one really small place to start.
Yeah, and right now in this room, you are the expert for informatics. So I appreciate you sharing your opinion and your knowledge with us and with me and the NDTR audience. And that's a really, I love that point that you brought up of sometimes you have to put the weight in and you can't move forward. And like you said, it seems simple, but like that can be a very big, important deal, especially when you're working every day with clients and you're dealing with this weight thing. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that and speaking to that and shining some light on that area. And so I want to ask my last question for you. What has been annoying or frustrating or challenging or confusing about holding the NDTR credential in the almost 6 years you've had it about?
Yeah, 6 years. Geez, that's a while ago. Yeah. I think the most challenging thing is having that 2-year degree. That was the thing that was the hardest for me to navigate in the job market. From my opinion, and I could be wrong, I felt that I was not as valuable a candidate as somebody that had the same credential and a 4-year degree. So that was really challenging, which because at the community college level too, most people studying at the community college are older, which I was. And so you have more work experience, regardless of what it is that you're doing, you typically have more work experience than someone who's coming out of a bachelor's program. Generally, for the most part, that's the case. So I felt that my other experiences were undervalued because of that. So that was really challenging for me to navigate. And then when we're thinking from an equity perspective, not everybody has access to get a bachelor's degree or to get a master's degree. So how do we create more entry points into this profession and get more unique voices into this profession? And for me, that was at the community college level. And I think of, the profession of nursing too, how they have different tiers and different scopes of care. And you can get a huge diversity of people working in the nursing field. And I do think, in the future, the nutrition profession could be that same way to where there are more entry points to get into this profession. So it's that 2-year degree. I wish it could stay. I don't know where the academy is taking their, education requirements, but I do think there should be something at the 2-year level to get more people into this profession.
I 100% agree with you. When I found out that, I didn't know because I did the bachelor's program, but when you could be a DTR just with an associate's degree, I was like, that's wonderful because, you get people who know nutrition and they know how to do it correctly, evidence-based, and, not giving out all this misinformation and causing all of these people to diet and be unhealthy and malnourished, essentially. So yeah, I really hope they don't make it harder to get the NDTR credential. I hope they make the NDTR credential stand out more and show how valuable and important it really is. And so I appreciate everything that you're doing and all the time that you spent chatting with me today in the audience. And I want to just open up some time real quick. If there's anything else you want to say or speak to or leave any encouragement words for our audience before we close out.
Yeah, I would say if you're thinking about getting the NDTR, regardless of where you are in your educational journey, just do it. You will be surprised how much you actually know and will probably pass. It's a challenging credential to have, but what is so great is it's really you make it what you want. And if there's a certain niche that you want to explore and a way you want to have your career go, that is an opportunity for you. And if anything that I've said has resonated with anybody, or it hasn't, and you've completely questioned everything that I've said and you want to talk about it, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Sabrina Matlock. I would be happy to connect with you. I'm happy to take teachings from anybody, and would just love to connect. So that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Thank you, Sabrina. And yes, NDTRs, this field is so small and tight and wonderful. And I appreciate you being able to say, come and talk to me, to the audience. So thank you for doing that. Thank you everyone for watching. Comment, if you have any questions. Sabrina's the girl to go to for informatics. I know nothing about it. And we will see you in our next interview. Thank you again for watching.